Everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass on AI-powered automation. I'm Hannah, Digital Marketing and Event Specialist here at FlowForma, and I'll be your host for today's event. And just before we get started, I want to share a few tips in participating in today's masterclass. So the masterclass is being recorded, and if you need any assistance, you can email info@flowforma.com and they'll help you get logged in. Your lines are muted, but we want to make it as interactive as possible. So there should be a chat box for you on the toolbar and also a questions box. We will have a live Q&A, so you'll be able to get your questions answered live. And we will have polls and then a survey at the end. So we really want to make it as interactive as possible. So let's meet our experts. So we have Jared Newman, Chief Technology Officer here at FlowForma. Jared leads the direction of our product roadmap and innovation strategy, driving advancements in AI and process automation. Hi, Jared. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
And then we also have Niamh Lorden, Head of Marketing here at FlowForma. Niamh is passionate about empowering business people to digitize and automate at speed. She champions the message that with the right tools, anyone can drive digital transformation. Hi, Niamh. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everyone. It's good to have you here.
I'm going to pass it over to you guys, but if you need any help, more than welcome to message in the chat box. Best of luck.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay, so hi everyone, you're very welcome. Before we get into our masterclass, a deep dive into AI automation, I know there are people on the webinar today who may not be as familiar with FlowForma as others who have been talking to us over the past few years. So I'm just going to very quickly introduce the FlowForma platform. So FlowForma is a powerful and intuitive platform which is used for digitalizing business processes, so your everyday processes to your more complicated processes. I guess FlowForma from day one was all about empowering both business leaders and IT leaders to digitalize at speed. So we were first to market with a true no-code automation solution. I guess customers and prospects really love the fact that our solution is a complete platform. So within the platform, you are getting your forms, your workflow, your document generation, and your insights in there. And I guess over the last 2 years, it's been quite exciting. And Jared, I'm not going to cover your slides here, but Jared's team have been really busy in research and development, adding an AI layer, which we call our AI suite, on top of the FlowForma automation platform. And that's really going to be a highlight of today's session. So we won't go into too much detail now, but you will get a little flavor of our FlowForma Copilot and our agents and assistants. So that's just a flavor of the product, which will add context for the masterclass. So moving on to our next slide. I know on our webinar today, we have attendees from across the globe, from different sectors, different departments. We have people on the session who are responsible for transformation, IT, and then people who might be responsible for compliance. So I do want to share that FlowForma has been proven and utilized to digitalize an A to Z of processes. For example, being used for incident management in hospitals, to grant applications in public admin bodies, and policy management in insurance. So very much proven across everyday and complicated processes. So that's just a little flavor of the product. Moving on to our next topic today, which is why we're all here. So I guess when Jared and Hannah and I came together and said, let's run this masterclass, it was really important for us to get an understanding of what your goals are for the next 6 to 12 months. So that is why we had a little question on the registration form. So thank you to everyone who filled that in. So I guess it's always nice to know what your peers are looking to for the next 6 months. And I guess, Jared, we weren't surprised when we saw these comments come back to us.
No, I suppose having worked in the process automation space for so long, it really is all about efficiency and effective processes. And what's interesting is that with the advent of AI, people are looking at how they can leverage that to make those processes even better.
Exactly. And I think there are a few trends that came out of what everyone said they wanted to learn from today's session. So like number one, increasing operational efficiency. That's nothing new to us. It's our bread and butter, what we're looking at daily. So Jared will be showcasing how we can help you with that. I guess there was a few comments, Jared, where people were saying, look, I'm really interested in AI, but I don't know where to apply AI in my processes, or I'm not really sure what I can even automate with AI. So we're definitely going to get Jared to cover that today with a little demo. And then I guess our favorite trend right now is agentic AI. So we have had people on this masterclass say that, you know, they want to learn how agents can support their staff so they can run things more efficiently. And at the end of the day, I guess, free up more time to spend with customers. So that's some of the goals of our attendees today. And I guess over the next 40 minutes, we'll have some demonstrations and tips and advice to help you with these goals. Okay, and then moving on to our next slide. So I guess we're at a very exciting point in automation right now in the end of 2025. And I think Forrester have summed up where we are on this journey, you know, very well. So I think organizations aren't just digitalizing anymore. They're really transforming processes with AI at the core of them. And I guess, you know, it can feel like there's a lot of hype out there on the market around AI, and there has been for a few years. But I guess what Jared and I are seeing is the practical use cases of AI automation and the outcomes that our community are getting on a daily basis. So I guess for me, and Jared, I'll let you add to this, you know, I think that the huge shifts that we're seeing with AI now is that you can take your process ideas, you can nearly instantly automate them with conversations with agents, which, you know, for me, I'm not a highly technical person. I don't have a coding background, so that's now allowing me to automate faster than ever before. So that's a massive plus. And I guess we're seeing our community automate unstructured tasks that they may have taught before, like that isn't really possible, and it is possible now with agents. And I guess recently we had a webinar with one of our customers, Sarah from state of Utah, and I guess they are seeing a huge benefit and outcome being compliance and audit readiness. And now when they're getting audited on their processes, they're getting top scores and no scrutiny because they have complete audit records. And I guess along with this, our customers are getting better business and process data from what they've automated. So I guess it's kind of, you know, we really want to move away from the hype on today's session and talk about practical use cases, which Jared will demonstrate.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Jared, I have a question for you. So, and I think this will really resonate with people on the masterclass today, and I hear it at a lot of automation events I go to. So everyone out there wants to be more efficient. They want to have agents supporting them on their processes. They want better insights, but sometimes they don't know what processes in their business they should look at, like which ones are ripe for AI infused automation. So could you share a few tips on what you'd suggest they look for?
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose if we focus in on processes that you want to make more efficient, I think any process, like from the original beginnings of the whole concept of process automation, you were looking at processes that had high volumes of repetitive tasks. But I think what AI has done is taken that a step further, and particularly with the advent of agents, it makes it so much easier to automate specific tasks. So I think if you're looking for somewhere to start, if you do look at processes that have reasonably high volumes of work going through, that's a good place to start. And particularly if they have the processes made up of kind of repetitive tasks or straightforward tasks, so that's a good place to start. But I think then what AI has really added to the whole mix in process automation is the ability to do things like support decisions. In other words, make recommendations, summarize processes to date and present information to you to allow you make a decision or to allow you continue with an AI generated decision. So it's really those kind of things. So I'll showcase a couple of those later on and just some of the ways we've used agents to solve particular problems.
Great. And I guess those examples that you're calling out there, Jared, like, credit approvals, risk management, they're everyday, daily processes that are very resource intensive. And if AI can help with that, the outcomes can be massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the benefits can be huge there. And it's not about necessarily about completely automating those processes. It's about kind of preparing the work and giving it to people to actually review what's been done. But what that does is it makes the whole process way quicker and allows greater volumes of work to go through the process, or allows people to focus on more value-added tasks.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully that helps people on the call with identifying the right process to move forward with. Okay, and then moving on to our next topic, which is actually a poll, because we do want to encourage interaction on today's session. So if you do have questions or if you want to pop any notes into the chat, please do that. Our first poll today, just to kind of get an understanding of where everyone is at with their AI automation strategy. We have 4 options on the poll, so if you could tell us which aligns closest with your strategy right now. So are you identifying process candidates for AI automation? Are you already piloting AI on some processes? Are you scaling successfully? Or you haven't started and you're kind of researching and trying to figure out what your next move is? So 4 options there. So maybe pick the one that is closest to you. Okay. Yeah. Oh, people are still voting. Okay, so looking like we have a clear winner, Jared, and I guess when we were anticipating the results, this kind of matches what we were thinking exactly. Do you want to share your thoughts on this, Jared?
Yeah, look, I think so. I mean, when we're talking a little bit later on, I'll be talking about running pilots and things with AI. I think it's exactly the right thing to do to try and identify what it can actually do for your organization. And also, it's definitely worthwhile looking around to see where you think AI can be effective and where it can actually start adding value. But I'm not surprised people haven't started yet. I think probably most people are using AI tools like ChatGPT and those kind of things. But the question is, or Copilot or something. But the question is, how do you build them into your business process so that they are used in the same way all the time to produce kind of more consistent results? So yeah, so it's a good mix there, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Hannah. And that's your input there is very helpful in driving the conversation for today. Okay, so now we're going to move into the more exciting elements of the masterclass today. So Jared, we will hand over to you and let you introduce the FlowForma AI suite, and then we can move into some exciting use cases.
That's fine. So if we just want to move on to the next slide there, just talk about these guys. Yeah, so about 2 years ago, we started experimenting with generative AI, and we were very enthusiastic to see what it could do with us. We looked at various other AI techniques in the past, but they didn't quite suit us or work for us. So Gen AI was something really interesting to us. So just like in the poll there, what we actually started off with was a whole lot of experiments or proofs of concept to try and explore what AI could do, and specifically what areas in the process automation domain it could really add value in. So, we discovered from that various strengths and weaknesses of Gen AI, and also identified areas that we were really interested in to see how they would develop with it. And obviously, when we started this, we were on very early versions of various LLMs, and that's advanced since, and they're more capable than they were. But this overall approach of kind of doing experiments really worked well for us, and I would highly recommend people to take that approach. Even if the experiments are disposable, you're always learning something from them, and it's always kind of advancing your knowledge and your understanding of how you can use AI within your own organization. So I think there were 3 main areas that we zoomed in on. First one, which we were really enthusiastic about, was how we could use AI to help organizations innovate and accelerate their overall process automation journey. because we realized that at times process automation is a bit of a slog, and anything that will help you speed up that journey or make it easier to get through that is definitely well worthwhile. So the second thing that we were looking at was how do we automate recurring tasks? So that's really where we started zooming in on agents to see what they could actually deliver. And our thinking from the very start was you would have AI agents as part of a blended workforce. So AI agents be taking on some tasks and they would be assisting people to do their role. And that's very much the kind of thinking that's emerged throughout 2025. And then the last thing was to see what kind of extra features and functionality we could add to our product to support process automation using AI. So things like AI summarization there, which just summarizes everything that's happened in the flow to date and just makes it easier for people to make improvement decisions, for example. So on the next slide here, what I'm just going to show you is just how we can actually, it's an example of how we've used AI to innovate. So if we want to go into that one. So so what I'm actually using here is I'm using something that's available on FlowForma.com. So if you'd like to just go to our webpage, you'll be able to access this. So this is our AI-based process builder. And we like it, and we've been investing a lot in it and developing it out. People who've used it a while ago will have seen the features will have changed. So we're constantly changing them and updating them as we learn and also as we get feedback on what the actual product does. So in my scenario today, I've been asked to build a data subject access request process for my organization. Now that process starts with a form. So I have a copy of the form, but I don't know an awful lot else about the process. So the form is fairly straightforward. It just asks for some details of the person requesting information, and it asks for details of their request. So to start my process build here, what I'm doing is I'm just loading up this form into the process builder. And I give it a simple instruction to convert the form into a single step process. So what that's going to do is AI is going to have a look at that form. First thing it does is it's just going to echo back to me and tell me that it's understood my request. And then what's happening here in our process builder is it's now read through that form, identified all the questions on it, and effectively created an electronic version of what was fundamentally a paper form. So you can also see at the bottom of the screen there, there's a little diagram which just shows this as a single step process. So let's say in my data subject request journey, the next thing that needs to happen is once the data subject request is received, it goes to other departments in my organization. So in this case, it's going to sales. Well, I actually met the sales department and they've explained to me very simply what they do. They take the request, they open up Salesforce, they look to see if there's any information about the subject in there. So what I'm going to ask now is I'm going to ask our process builder here to add an additional step now based on these notes, so that we will now have an extra step in our process, which allows sales to consider our data subject request. So again, we're just getting an echo back explaining what AI is doing. And then we have a second step added to our process. You can see it in the diagram at the bottom, but also you can see that it's now created a set of questions in our process. So those questions are just whether or not we've checked Salesforce, if we found any data, and if so, we're going to provide a summary of it. So the next step is, let's assume I don't really know much about this process in my organization. So, but I'm going to assume that once it's been to sales, it then goes to marketing and support. So marketing use HubSpot and support use Zendesk. So I've just typed in an instruction here in the chat asking the process builder to add additional steps for marketing and support. So again, it'll rebuild the process, and as you can see, it's now added some additional steps up the top for marketing, and you can see it's identified from my instruction that marketing use HubSpot, and you can see that support use Zendesk, and it's identified that as well. Yeah, so you can just see me putting in the instruction there in the chat, just at the bottom, and what will happen now is AI will go ahead and actually carry out that request. So again, it's just going to echo back, say that it's understood the actual request, and it's going to start building out the process again. And you can see it's added a final step there just to take into account the legal department and their input. But in the diagram, you can see that it's actually expanded that out. And we now have the ability to pass back the actual data subject request right back to the sales department. So this is a kind of fairly simple example. As I say, this is available on our homepage, so please visit it, try it out. But the key thing here is that if I didn't have AI here, the approach to building this process would have been to go and interview sales, interview marketing, interview support, understand what they actually want, document it down, get their signed off agreement on it, and then try to start manually building out something. And the key point about that is that that all takes a lot of time. And that the fact that that takes time and have to interact with so many people is actually a barrier to process automation. So in our experiments with this, it's very simple to actually go in and just ask it a very open question to go and build a process to do X, Y, or Z. But what you're not doing is just creating a mock-up of a process. This same capability is available in Flow Designer, which is the tool we use to actually create our processes. So in this example here, I've loaded in the same documentation, given it the same instructions, etc. And what that actually does is it creates a working process for us. So here I can enter in the details of the data subject request, and then that could be somebody external to the organization entering that, and then it's just going to be pushed through the various steps in the process. So effectively, this video is taking about 5.5 minutes to go through. So in 5.5 minutes, I've built a working process which actually handles something in my organization that I don't know a whole lot about. And this is why when we started doing our experiments around process build, we were really impressed with what generative AI could do for us, because it has a large knowledge of processes and how people go about doing certain jobs in their organization. So you can always interact with the knowledge that's there using things like the FlowForma playground on our homepage, which allows you to start sketching out processes. And if you can go and engage with parts of the business with the process that's already been built out, it's way easier to get engagement, to get feedback, and to carry on with that automation initiative rather than starting with a blank page.
Okay, totally agree with that, Jared, and I'm probably biased, but I love how fast and interactive this is. And yes, people are encouraged to test for yourself on our homepage, and you can upload an image of your diagram, or you can just type in the process that you want to digitalize. And like, I know I've been at automation events and people have put their hand up and they've said, I don't know how to map a process, I don't know how to get started. So Jared, this is really like accelerating that speed from, hey, this is something we need to digitalize, to actually then visualizing it and showing it to a stakeholder group and getting sign off.
It's an absolutely is, and we love it because the various first of all, we use Copilot extensively ourselves in building out processes for demonstrations, those kind of things. But also what we love about one of the really nice features is you can go in, gather around a whiteboard, sketch out a process, take a photograph of that and load it into Copilot and actually start building out a process for you. So it's those kind of acceleration things that make it, you take something from a concept to a reality really quick. And it also means you can build processes that are effectively disposable. I'm running a marketing campaign for the next 4 months and I need a process to do that. Great, build out your process, and at the end of it, you can just get rid of it because it's been so easy to actually build it out in the first place.
Yeah, perfect.
So okay, yeah, off you go, Eve.
That brings us on to our next topic, Jared. So yes, obviously there was feedback from the registrants of this masterclass that they wanted to understand how agents could support their staff. Can agents help make their operations slicker, faster, comply better? So yeah, I think this is the hot topic of the moment. So we'd love, Jared, if you could educate us on how to train up these agents. I know you have a few use cases to share with us.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I mean, at the start of the year, we did our predictions for 2025. Agentic AI was all over those. So I mean, those predictions come true really, because there's a huge amount of interest in this at the moment. Now, I don't know what exposure the audience have to agents or creating agents. So I'm just going to start with a very simple example, just to explain how you can go about creating an agent and getting it to do some work for you. So for me, a single kind of purpose agent can be very successful when it has a clearly defined task to do, and you expect a clear outcome out of that. So obviously, if you have a task which involves doing something clear, getting a clear outcome, and you're doing it lots of times, it's a good candidate to build an agent on. And when you're programming an agent or training it or instructing it, whatever words you want to use, I mean, you need to just do so with natural language, and you just need to give it clear instructions as to what you expect it to do, how to handle any exceptions that might occur. And you also want to keep your prompts, generally you want to keep them generic, so that they're not really specific to doing to handling perhaps a certain type of information. So on the right hand side, you've got an example of a prompt I'm just going to show you now in a short demo, but it's very clear. It tells the agent that it's a data entry agent and it processes invoices. And for each invoice, it has to extract a set of data. And if it can't find that piece of data on the invoice, it should return the words not supplied. And if it does encounter any amounts on the invoice with currency symbols, we want to ignore those. And we also want to record how long it's actually taking to do the job. So we can have a look at this if you want to go on to the next slide. So to do this, as I say, it's simple. It's a simple invoice processing flow. So it involves 3 steps. Invoices come into our organization, they're received, then data is taken off them and entered onto a form, and then it's passed into our accounting system. And this is deliberately a very simple example just to show a basic agent in operation. So first of all, we're just looking at how it works manually without an agent. So here we have an invoice from Bloom, and it's for $18, and it was received in May. So what I'm going to do now is just take that invoice, and we're going to just enter the details. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so now we're on the next step here, and what it's actually doing is I just enter the details there of the invoice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just set up an agent so that it's going to do this task for me. So what's happening here is, first of all, I just put in that prompt we saw on the earlier screen or the previous slide, and now what I'm doing is I'm telling the agent that when it finds the information I've requested in the prompt, what to actually do with it. So I want to populate it into the various questions, etc. on the form. So I'm just going to start again here with my invoice and load that up, and I'm going to submit it. And what's happening now is the agent is taking that invoice and it's reading through it, and it's extracting all of the details from it. And you can see here that it's actually populated all of the fields that we have on the second step in this process successfully. You can see it didn't identify a VAT amount, so it's edited as not supplied, and it's extracted the currency successfully as well. So this is a simple example of an agent, just a single task agent doing something that somebody might be manually doing today. Now, there's loads of technology for extracting information from documents, and there has been for many, many years. However, most of that technology takes some time to implement and to configure, etc. So this is a really simple way. And it's also task AI is really good at in terms of extracting information from lots of different formats of documents. So in the next few slides, what we're going to do is just look at some more complex agent use cases. So in the first one here, we built a proof of concept around claims processing in the insurance industry, in general insurance. So this is kind of a more complex task. But complex tasks are achieved in this case by agents working together to deliver a result. So we have a whole suite of agents here, and I'm not going to go through what they all actually do, but there are agents with different specializations. So for example, there's agents that will read policy documentation and claims forms and that kind of stuff, and actually pull information from those and bring that information into a standard format. And then we have other agents which we have to build specific tools for that can go out to your existing policy systems and claim systems and pull in data from those. So what these agents are doing is they're assembling information together. And then that information is being passed to more of a decision-making agent where we're validating that the claim that has been received is valid and should actually be processed. So for example, if you're making a claim for a motor accident on your home insurance policy, that wouldn't be valid. So what it's doing there is validating that the claim should be processed through to the next stage. So the next two robots around assessor review and risk analysis, they're again more intelligent, and I suppose you could say maybe a bit more deeper thinking in terms of what they're trying to do. But they're trying to make a decision as to whether or not this claim should be allowed or not. So in the first claims validation, we're just saying whether claims should be rejected immediately. But then we're coming into a situation where we're assessing the actual damage that's being claimed for, seeing is it covered under the policy and all of the small print, etc., and the terms and conditions of it. And we're also looking at things like your claims history to see how many times you've claimed for this kind of issue before. And as part of that, we're calculating a risk score as well to say, you know, is this a completely legitimate claim, or is there any reason to have any sort of suspicion for this particular claim? And all of that information is then fed into a recommendation agent. And what that's doing is assessing all of that information and making a recommendation to the claims assessor. So the net effect of this is that the claims assessor gets a recommendation on what they should do with the claim that they can then either agree with or disagree with. And the main advantage of this is it's saved a huge amount of time. But from a customer point of view, it also means that you're getting a better response time on the claims. And we know that in the insurance sector, claims handling, the cost of claims handling and the time taken for claims handling is a huge factor or a huge element in the overall business and for insurance companies trying to manage their costs. But also it's a really important part for customers in terms of customer satisfaction. So anything we can do to improve that, make it more consistent, make it all more automated is definitely of value.
And I guess, Jared, it's making the process much more efficient. It's better experiences for employees that they have these agents supporting them in their work. They're processing the claims faster. And I guess there's probably less errors with the agents supporting on making predictions and suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely, you know, all those kind of potential data errors that you can pick up are eliminated. But also as you develop this, you can kind of tweak the agents and you can also refine the prompts or the instructions that you're giving them, all of which tightens them up and means that you're getting less exceptions to it. But it still is very much keeping the human in the loop here.
Sure.
Because, you know, what you're trying to do is speed up. Effectively, you want to give the assessor here a really well prepared piece of work that they can just pick up and work on, rather than have them going around, scrambling around, trying to get information and bringing it out of different systems, etc. So it's really about kind of teeing up that work to make that claims assessor more efficient.
Yeah, it's a really powerful use case, and I know we have people from insurance on the masterclass. So thanks for sharing that one. And I think the second use case we're moving into as well is actually a popular one we've been asked for a few times in the last week or two, Jared, which is transforming tender management, which I think lots of people have spent huge amounts of hours on and nights working on tenders over the years. So how can our agents streamline this process going forward, Jared?
Yeah, I think you probably could have done with this in times in the past, all right. Anyway, this is a really interesting use case, which we developed out having talked to a number of customers and potential customers. So the issue here is that there are organizations responding to tenders. These tenders are really complex. There's huge amounts of documentation and information, and all that documentation is provided in different formats, in text, in data files, and in things like drawings, etc. And what the objective is to try and create a response to this tender. But obviously, the real objective is to create a response to the tender that actually wins the tender. So what we're doing here is we have a number of agents which effectively consume all of this information associated with the tender. So these are all the tender documents and their supporting documents and information and those kind of things. But what they also consume is information about your organization and your own USPs, so that those can be worked into any responses that are being created. So once we have this knowledge base around the overall tender, we have a group of agents, and what the agents do is they've each been prompted to answer specific questions within the tender. So those questions might be about your approach to delivering the actual project, the materials you're using, the costings of it, etc. So those agents are prompted to actually come up with default or initial responses, I suppose, to each one of those questions in the tender. And that then leads to these kind of responses which people will review and either tailor or decide to use the default that's been created. But what this means is that the tender team are capable then of reviewing these responses, but they can also interact directly with the knowledge base. And this is a real challenge for very large tender documents, because people aren't great at reading and consuming and remembering all of the information in them. However, AI is generally very good at that. So the response team can actually just ask very direct questions of AI, and it'll pull the information out of the tender knowledge base. So unlike the situation we had at the very start, where we were talking about Copilot being used and its information, the information it has in processes, in this case, what we're doing is we're very much specifically answering questions based on the knowledge base that are built up on documentation that we have provided. And that's combined with the LLM, but your data is obviously kept secure and separate. So the only thing to watch here is hallucinations, but then they can be overcome as well. But the overall approach here is that you're significantly speeding up the time, you're delivering a quality response to the tender, and allows the tender response team focus on making sure that those USPs come out in the response.
Thanks, Jared. I think that's another very helpful use case. And there's a nice segue into our third use case today. So, everyone's involved in tenders, whether you're putting out tenders to market or responding to tenders. And obviously part of the tender submissions is often the piece around security questionnaires and vendor management, which is a huge area and a very important focus on organizations, and it does take up a huge amount of time. So Jared, you might talk us through our new product just very recently launched, which is FlowAssure, and how that can help drive efficiency for this use case.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, this is, I suppose this is a very topical issue for most organizations. I mean, the whole concept of onboarding vendors, particularly IT-based vendors, is really important now in maintaining your overall data security and that kind of chain of control you have over your overall organization, where you have many functions distributed out to different vendors. So this is an issue in small organizations, but in larger organizations where you have thousands of vendors, it's a really big issue. And the process of onboarding vendors is kind of becoming more onerous. So what we've done here is we very much productized this, and what we've done is assembled a team of agents who can do different things. So if we take technology or application onboarding, we have agents who are capable of reading vendors' pen tests. We have agents that are capable of interpreting and understanding questionnaires that have been filled in, an agent that's capable of reading ISO reports, and an agent that's capable of reading SOC 2 reports. So what all of these agents do is they read their relevant reports, and these agents are fairly specialized to be able to read and interpret all of that and answer the questions we want to ask about it. So what they do is they read that information, and they understand, they are capable of identifying if there's any shortcomings in that or any areas that need further clarification. They'll generate the questions that need to be clarified, and they can send them directly to the vendor, or they can send them to a cyber security analyst, who in turn will then send them out to the vendor. And we've also set it up in a way that for non-critical vendors or low-risk vendors, they can just be automatically approved. So what that does is it just means that the cybersecurity analysts can focus more on those really critical applications that are being onboarded, or ones where there are significant questions that need to be asked and be evaluated.
Great, thanks for that, Jared. I'm sure that'll be useful to people on the masterclass today. I think that sums up our three use cases. And I think they're very practical use cases, and they're definitely moving beyond the hype. And these are real world use cases that both our customers and prospects are using. So we'd love some more masterclass attendee participation. So I'm always thinking about, the outcomes and digitalizing and using AI for outcomes and not just for the sake of it. So, I think everyone should be thinking about, the work world in which they're trying to create, and here at FlowForma, we're all about trying to create a world where work flows as it should, approvals happen as they should, and insights are available when and where you need them. So to help people on their journey of AI-infused automation, we have some options available to you. So Hannah will just launch a quick poll now. So if you are interested in a consultation with one of our AI experts, or you're interested in running a pilot or a trial with us, just submit your answer and that will go through to our team and we can follow up directly with you. Okay, thanks for that, Hannah. Okay, so actually the time is flying by at our masterclass today, and we do want to leave some time for Q&A. So I guess before we jump into Q&A, Jared, I was just thinking about, some tips that we'd like to leave with our audience today as they go on this journey. And it is a journey. It's not like just flicking on a switch and you have everything AI powered. I guess for me, my first tip would be, don't just add on AI, think about the problem that you're trying to achieve. And like with any project, if you're focused on the outcomes and realizing those, you will have success. Something I see a lot of the analysts such as Forrester and Gartner preach about is that, to power all this AI in your processes, you need to have like a solid process foundation, which is repeatable. And yeah, I think that's a good phrase. AI can amplify good processes, but it's not going to fix bad ones. And that is where I guess Copilot can come in really helpful, Jared, for people automating those processes, adding their AI agents on top. And I guess with automation like ours, you have the data validation in there, and then you're going to have better data for your AIs to work from.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in many cases that's what AI is about. It's about using information that you have that's a clean information from a good source.
Yeah. We have touched on this a few times throughout the masterclass, but we're very much all about keeping humans in the loop with automation. AI and agents are fantastic, and they will help with, your predictions, suggestions, commentary, moving processes in a certain direction. But we all need the human at the end of the day to make those smart decisions. And I guess, Jared, as well, rolling out AI is not just a technology change, it's a big culture change for organizations. And I think what we've seen customers do really well is like you have to communicate with your staff, you have to train them, you have to get feedback, and you need to bring them on this journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like any good project, we really are passionate about, test, learn, deploy, test again, and that's something that can be so easily done now with the FlowForma Copilot. So you can prototype those processes really quickly and get feedback. And it's back to what perfection being the enemy of progress. So just get your process out there, get it digitalized, add your AI on this week or next week, and continue to improve. And we did have a question come in actually, Jared. Someone was asking that in the chat about continuous improvement, and that is a good tactic, where you can automate really fast and prototype and get your feedback.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's definitely the way to go. Spending, I mean, traditionally process automation often involved large analysis projects at the start to understand all the processes, etc., before you do anything. But those days are really gone now because processes change quite quickly. So it's way better to try and start with something automated and have it in use, get feedback, and change it.
Perfect. Okay. So I think we're going to move into Q&A. So Hannah, you might take some of the questions that have been coming in the chat.
Yeah, sure. So now we have our live Q&A. I can see that we do have a good couple of questions. So if we don't get time to answer all of them today, we will follow up with you. But if anyone else has any more questions, pop them into the questions box or the chat box now. But let's see what we have. So we have our first one, and it says, we've lots of processes mapped that need automation. What upload file types does FlowForma Copilot support?
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, that's back to Jared's presentation at the start of the session. So if you do have your process mapped, you can upload those diagrams, PNG files, JPEG files into the Copilot, and it will transform them within seconds for you. So really easy to do.
Another person also saying, love the agent examples. How much training do these agents need? So maybe Jared, if you could take that one, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I suppose it's not so much training that they need because they're all based on generative AI and the LLMs behind that. So what they really need is clear instructions. So as I was showing there in the instruction, the very simple invoice processing agent, you just need to clearly tell it what you want to do, what you expect the result to be, how it should handle any unexpected events. And you do all that really through English. And just like with other programming languages, it doesn't mean you get it right first time. So you might need to tweak the instruction and try it out with different examples to make sure that it's giving you the results that you actually expect.
I'm just going to pop quickly through these because I know we're finishing up now soon. But are there any prereqs to using the FlowForma platform? Maybe Niamh, you can take this one.
Yeah, so FlowForma is an app which sits on top of SharePoint Online. So if you have Office 365 already, in nearly 99% of cases, you will have SharePoint Online. So that's the only prereq.
And then we have another one. How do you track what AI has done or suggested for audit purposes? Maybe Jared, you could take that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I suppose specifically here, we're talking about agents, and as they work in a process, how do you know what they've actually done? And so I think this is a very important issue. You need to be able to understand what they've done and the quality of the output that they've actually produced. And to a certain extent, this is music to our ears because we really do believe that a good place to place agents is within your existing processes or within a structured process environment. And once agents are sitting there, they're effectively working like somebody might be, and they're subject to the same measurements, and that you can see the work that they took in, the output they produced, and that'll all flow through into your insights dashboards so that you can monitor how they're performing, what they're doing, and how much work they're doing.
And then just another one for you, Jared, as well. Are there limits to process complexity, size, or frequency that FlowForma AI can handle?
There were no real limits to it. You can obviously build out complex processes using Copilot. You can feed in your diagrams, etc., as you saw me doing at the start. So there's no limits to that at all. And what I will say is that it's very much focused around business processes. So it won't build certain type of processes like baking a cake, that kind of stuff. And it also won't necessarily build sort of very technical integration processes. You see other products there for that, where you're actually tying together systems through a set of steps. So that's not what it's designed for. It's very much designed for business processes in organizations that get the work done.
And we do have a couple more questions. I know we won't get to all of them, but here's another question. We're planning our migration away from InfoPath. This seems like a good alternative. Is this a common use case for FlowForma?
Yes, definitely. So we just interviewed a customer a couple of weeks ago, Morley College. So they have just recently gone on this journey with us. So yeah, definitely get in touch. We'll be able to help you out. Copilot now makes that migration easier than ever. So we can take captures of your InfoPath forms and upload them into our product. So yeah, migration to FlowForma is quite straightforward.
Perfect. And I'm just going to finish up with the questions there, but we will get back to anyone else who left us a question as well. So for the next steps, you can avail of a complimentary demo tailored to your processes. And don't forget, you can head to the FlowForma Playground on our homepage right now to start prototyping your processes. Thank you so much for joining us today, Niamh and Jared. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We will have a survey at the end, so if you want to avail of anything and leave your feedback, yeah, please let us know. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for organising, Hannah.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye now.